This is a conversation with Deep Dasgupta. He's a former Indian cricketer, now a renowned cricket analyst and coach. He is one of the most successful captains for the Bengal state cricket team, having led them to two consecutive Ranji Trophy finals. In this conversation, we discuss the impact of the 1983 Cricket World Cup final. We talk about state cricket in Delhi and Bengal in the 90s. We talk about his international debut and playing with Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar, Saurav Ganguly. I'm not sure if these names seem familiar to you. And then he gives us a small masterclass into wicket keeping. This is no time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, or rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project takes a lot of my time, money, and effort. So if you like to see it continue, do consider making a donation on Patreon or Anchor. You can buy super thanks on YouTube. You can buy a gift on Instagram Reels, or you can join as a member on YouTube. If not through monetary channels, do consider sharing these episodes, leaving your likes and comments. All forms of engagement, they really go a long way. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram or Twitter, or follow me personally.
And now, Ayla, it's no time.
The day is June 25th, 1983. You are 6 years old, sitting at home in front of one of the only televisions in your colony. In fact, half your colony is also at your house, glued to the same screen. You have often said that you're part of the 83 generation. For those of us who were not lucky enough to be there that day, who hadn't lived through that day, can you help paint that picture? Can you help me live that day through your eyes? What was the sentiment around you? Can you paint that picture? What is the feeling like? What are some memories that stand out to you from the Cricket World Cup final of 1983?
See, I'll be honest. I mean, it's that day and what happened post that day.
Yeah.
So obviously that day I still remember. So I don't know, people, some people would know what I'm saying. So we used to stay in a rented place on a Barsati in Delhi. Barsati would be the top floor, which had the whole terrace, but also part of it, you have rooms and stuff like that, right? And in that area, not too many people at that point in time had television. And it was obviously, I think it was black and white. And I still remember everyone kind of, whoever we knew got together. It was obviously evening. And it was, as a child, I was 6 years old back then. And the idea was I didn't understand much in terms of the technicalities or it's a World Cup final or whatever. It was looking at other people around me, the elders, and who got so excited. So it was about that. It was about looking at everyone else and, kind of and kind of trying to be part of that whole celebration or that whole process. So it was more than that than actually enjoying the game or understanding what's happening. As a 6-year-old, you really don't understand that much. But obviously from that happened, and then the repercussions of that in terms of, cricket, and everyone wanted to be a Kapil Dev or a Sunil Gavaskar. And then, talks about Roger Binney and Madan Lal and, Kirti's, the number of all-rounders we had, all of them, and then Mahindra Manath and all of that. So it was unbelievable. I mean, and then the whole focus was on cricket. Everyone was playing cricket. It's not that before that also everyone would, but then there was this, new zeal to play cricket, whether it's in the parks. In Delhi, you have these parks and the houses are located around the park. So every evening, go to the park in the terrace, play cricket. And, I have an elder brother and have somebody who used to be in our family, like my elder brother. So he would be playing in the terrace and stuff like that. And it was just crazy. It was just cricket all around. I mean, you went to somebody's house, you were discussing cricket. If you're not playing cricket, then you're discussing cricket. So that was it. And back then, obviously, I mean, you didn't have anything else. You had one channel, no computers, no internet, no nothing of that sort. So So, it was all about either playing the sport or talking about the sport.
You brought up Sunny G. One of the first matches you watched live, Sunil Gavaskar scored a century.
Yeah.
So once again, for people who weren't lucky enough to watch him play live, most of us now know him as a cricket broadcaster. So can you help paint that picture as well? What was the aura around Sunil Gavaskar? What was the sentiment around him?
It was okay for guys who remember Sachin. It would, just to kind of relate to that kind of madness. It was like Sachin when Sachin played, or like MS or Virat. But it was, I would say, on a different level, because obviously you did not get to know as much as you know now about, let's say, what they do through the social media handles and stuff like that. So there was also a cloud of mystery around them, what they did. And, every article about them would be like massive. Did you read that? And, he does this, he does that. Now it's a lot more easier to know your heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and so my first thing was, obviously, this was Firoz Shah Kotla, because I was brought up in Delhi. So my dad took me, and I still remember back then when you enter the stadium, and obviously there weren't seats, there were like steps back then, and you would be on the steps, and you would be given, as soon as you enter, by sponsors and stuff like that, a paper hat. Okay, just the peak, and you had these rubber bands or elastics attached to it, so you could wear them, and you had the logos on the peak of those paper caps. And I still remember going there and collecting. So a few of them would chuck them and all. I would be collecting and all of that. But yeah, what I do remember, again, I wasn't that old to understand that. But my dad's a huge, and my family, everyone's a huge SMG fan. And Sunny Sir was obviously on fire. And obviously there's a backstory to it, which obviously, because the number of fans in the house, would be like, the test match before that, I think, was in Kanpur, and Malcolm Marshall had bowled a bouncer, and he got out kind of fending, and the bat kind of fell down, and that hasn't happened ever before. He's technically the most sound kind of ever to have played the sport, and the bat fell out of his hand, and there was this, is he like on his way out? Is his powers are waning?
Yeah.
He couldn't, because he was like God, fast bowling and batting wise, he was God. And so the backstory was this: is his powers waning? Is he on his way out now? Kind of fending, and the bat falling off his hand. And this was the backstory to that innings. And then this happened. I think he got 100 in the first session itself. And he was pulling and hooking, because he had stopped pulling and hooking, and which he told me later. I was lucky enough, I am lucky enough to spend a lot of time with him. And he had stopped playing the pull or the hook before that. But on that particular morning and that innings, he decided he's going to pull everything that comes his way. He's not going to duck. Yeah. And he did it, and he got that 100, and it was chaos. And it was chaos after that as well, just talking about that innings and how good it was. And it took on, because got to remember that in the 70s and 80s, West Indies fast bowling was scary. For somebody to bat the way he did against them, and especially that innings. It was just madness. It was unbelievable. And that whole experience as a child, and then obviously post that, I started playing cricket, started attending and in Delhi. And every time the Indian team would come to Delhi to play a game or something, they would practice where I practiced, the National Stadium. So I also got the opportunity at a very early age to kind of watch them really close and spend a little bit of time, because I was 7, 8 when I started with the academy, roughly during that period, 83, 84. And I was the youngest. I would be going to the academy in my white shorts, because I was too young to wear trousers back then and stuff like that. And I still remember a few of them would, put me on their shoulder, because I was the youngest anyway. I was the youngest by far. And I was just there. I'm just running around picking up balls, not really playing cricket, but I just wanted to be around. And so I was lucky enough to kind of watch them, and that played a huge role in shaping my thought process in terms of how serious, and because that makes a huge difference. Well, I mean, looking or watching them on television, that also helps, but actually seeing them live practicing and doing stuff, you get a different kind of a picture. And I think that was huge, just to watch them. And they're like, obviously they were like demigods. They were like, it was brilliant.
You spoke about the aura around Sunil Gavaskar, and you spoke about the West Indian fast bowlers. Earlier, you had mentioned Kapil Dev, Madan Lal, Roger Binney, all these legends. You have often said that the 1970s and 80s is one of the best eras in cricket, is one of the best decades. Let me ask you why. Why do you think that is the golden age for cricket, according to you?
Because for me, the quality of cricket, if you think about the players that played during that era, we keep talking about West Indies, we talk about Australia, England, India, Pakistan, and the players, they're all, I mean, every team had at least 2-3 legends, not just good players, just legends. West Indies had their fair share of legends during that period. India, Pakistan, like Imran Khan, Javed Miandad, all these guys, Zahir Abbas, and then Australia, you had Lilly, Thompson, and, the Chappell brothers, all these guys. I mean, it was just unreal if you think about the just quality of players that was playing international cricket at that point in time, 70s and 80s. And I don't know, I'm very old school, so it was, test matches were like, there were no bouncer issues and stuff like that. It was more technical. And I don't know, there's this very weird sense of purity with cricket back then. I don't know whether that's the right word to use or not, but it was unadulterated to a great extent. It was just like you as a bowler trying to obviously take wickets, but if not, then actually hurt someone while the other guy is trying to survive and score runs. And it was just unbelievable. Yeah.
Personally, I love backstories into all these matches and players, because now when I look back, all I have is a scorecard and those backstories are lost. But this is what really makes it fun. So let me ask you another backstory. You spoke about growing up in Delhi, playing at the National Stadium. You have spent a large chunk of your time playing in Delhi, but then when you later in your teenage years, when you moved to when you went to visit your family in Bengal, you were roped in to play the Moeen-ud-Dawla tournament as well for Bengal. So you're one of the few people who can actually answer this question truthfully. Both states have such rich historic legacies of state cricket. They're both such institutions. Delhi is known to be quite cutthroat, quite aggressive. Bengal has one of the richest, oldest legacies in state cricket as well. So let me ask you about the general state of state cricket in both these states. What was the competition like? What are some of the similarities and differences? Are the stereotypes true? What are some things that stood out to you both from Delhi state cricket and Bengal state cricket?
Well, very different approach to cricket. Bengal always, Delhi, like you said, was a little more cutthroat, and it was not only tough, but at times you would get disillusioned as in what's happening, because there's a lot, the dynamics are so different, at least were back then with Delhi cricket. And obviously, the quality of cricket, obviously, because they would play a lot more cricket. Back in Bengal, when I came back, there was a culture shock because of the weather. Predominantly, you couldn't play. In Delhi, a lot of the local cricket is hot weather cricket when you play during the summer, June, July, and that's that time, because the monsoon's not that long in that part of the country. But in Bengal, you would have to stop and not play cricket for at least 4 months. So you would lose a chunk of the year to the weather. Right? You could only start from October. So in the end, you ended up playing only limited number of games. In Delhi, you would play a game every day. So literally in a year, you would be playing 200 games And because you would play so much of cricket, one, your cricket sense would develop very differently. You could afford to make a lot more mistakes. You weren't bothered if you not score in 2 games because you're playing 198 more games. But in Bengal, when I came in, I figured out I've got only limited number of games in a season. I can only play 30 odd games max. So every innings became that much more important. So my game also changed from being a very flamboyant kind of a player to kind of a safe player. So because when you're playing 200 games, you're not bothered if you get out early. You still got tons of games coming through. So you would play more fearlessly. But then when I moved to Bengal, because the sheer number of games reduced drastically, you would be a little more careful. Every innings meant a lot. So you won't play that freely. So first few years, it was like that. And then I realized, it's not that simple. You got to focus every innings. You got to do things differently. So obviously, the way I played, my cricketing mindset kind of changed as well. So I think that is a major difference. And because of that, a lot of things affect. For example, you're more outspoken. You're more. I guess that's not just about cricket. In general, also. Again, I'm kind of generalizing that way, but you're more outspoken. You're, you're more upfront. Maybe in Bengal cricketing circles, you're a little more introvertish, if I may say so. So those were the major differences, and those are major differences. That's the reason in terms of talent, I'd say equally good both states have been over the years, even now. But there's a reason why you have more cricketers, international cricketers coming out of Delhi than Bengal is kind of Bengal being underachievers over the years. And the mindset is for me the major reason behind it.
Who would have thought the weather would be such an important factor in shaping the type of cricketers that come out? Yeah, well, the Bengal players are a bit more assured, a bit more conservative, as the Delhi cricketers, like you mentioned, a bit more flamboyant. You mentioned the cutthroat nature of Delhi state cricket. Why do you think that is? And do you think that is still like a sustainable aspect of state cricket? Because it does churn out some really exceptional cricketers as well.
So that also, that also becomes your filtering process. Yeah, there are cracks. Like anywhere else, there are cracks, and a lot of good talent fall through those cracks. But it doesn't affect that much because the sheer number of players or people playing the sport. So yeah, but listen, it's unfortunately there are really good talent who fall through the cracks as well, and I've seen that over the years. And the reason of Delhi cricket being a little more cutthroat is, okay, it's not. Maybe Bengal cricket is a little more organized because you have clubs. You got to play for a club the whole season. You got to play for one club. You can't move over. So if you're not playing well, if you get dropped, your season is gone. Right. So you can't move clubs. So only next season. So if you don't choose which has happened with me, a couple of years, I chose a club which I shouldn't have at that age. And I just played 7-8 games in the whole season. Right. But in Delhi, what happens is it's all tournament based. So you can play for an X team in a A tournament. In B tournament, you can play for a different club. So you end up playing a lot more games. So there are a lot more players involved. There's a lot more cricket happening. So for example, in Bengal, you have, at least back then, there used to be 5 tournaments, right? And you could only play for that one club. And there was the league, there was the one day, and maybe 4 tournaments, right? And that was it. But in Delhi, there are hundreds of tournaments. There are private tournaments which are being played. So the number of cricketers are huge. So now, if you look at Bengal cricket, so you got, if I'm not wrong, and I might be, so roughly around 118 odd clubs, first division, second division. So if you take that 118 clubs, oh, no. What am I saying? It's not less than that. I think 70, 80 clubs, sorry, something like that. So okay. If you multiply by, let's say, 15 or 17, 18 kids, So that's the number of cricketers we're talking about. Yes, you go to the district, you have district teams, you have more. But I'm just saying Delhi itself, there are hundreds of clubs, small, big, major, small, whatever, playing hundreds of tournaments. So the number of players, the pool, the talent pool is huge.
Mhm.
End of the day, you're going to be, there are only going to be 15 guys playing for the state Ranji Trophy, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever in the squad. Same for Bengal as well. But the number and the pool is so huge in Delhi, and hence the cutthroat and everything else. And yeah, Delhi cricket is not just about Delhi. So everyone from UP, Punjab, Chandigarh, all these guys, they all come and play there. From Jharkhand, they come and play, right? So it's not just about guys who are only playing for Delhi. So everyone, you can name all the UP Ranji Trophy guys are people who've played for India from UP. They've all played Delhi cricket, local cricket. Okay? So it's not just about Delhi, it's all about the surrounding area as well.
Yeah, that definitely adds to it as well. Yeah, such an interesting dynamic of state cricket and how that shapes the cricketers that emerge out of it. I find it fascinating. Let's jump ahead and let's talk about your international debut. A memorable tour of South Africa for multiple reasons, both on and off the field. First, let's talk about the cricket. You've often said that for cricketers, the first hour is enough to gauge whether you belong in international cricket or not. For you, it was the first hour plus that time when you successfully faced 90 miles per hour rockets from Nanty Hayward that was further cemented for you. So, in true broadcasting fashion, can you provide a play-by-play of your mental state throughout that debut series, right from the point 10 minutes before the toss when you found out you're about to debut, to the matches themselves, to the end of the series? Can you chart out the evolution of a cricketer making their debut in international cricket?
That's very interesting. So, okay, again, a backstory to that, because a lot of people might not understand where I'm coming from, is pre-IPL and post-IPL is a huge difference. So pre-IPL, when I was picked for India, obviously the Indian players were not available as much for domestic cricket, right? Because they're playing for the country. So before playing for the country, I had barely faced India's top bowlers, like let's say Shribhai, as in Srinath, Javagal Srinath, or Zahir Khan, or Ashish Nehra, Ajit Agarkar, all these guys. I had barely faced them once or twice. And then I went and played for the country. And I was playing the South Africans. But now, post IPL, before you kind of play international cricket, you face everything both on and off the field. You experience all of that before you actually play international cricket. Because of IPL, so you're playing against and with the best players in the world, the pressures, the spotlight, the fame, everything. You kind of experience all of that. So pre-IPL, things were a little different. So there was always a doubt, at least in my mind, whether I was good enough or not to play for India or international cricket. So the first ball of, especially I'm talking about test match cricket, I think that's what you're talking about as well. So obviously, I was just sitting there and watching an absolutely magnificent partnership. Virendra Sehwag, Sachin Tendulkar. We were like, we were 20 for 3 or something on those lines, right? We were batting first. We lost 3 wickets. Was it 4? 3, I guess, very early. And then there was this partnership and that went on for a while. So that kind of helped me kind of relax a bit, because when you see Rahul Dravid getting out and VVS Lakshman getting out, and SS Das getting out, and you're like, God, what's happening here? We're talking about these guys who playing international cricket for so many years. It's so difficult for them to handle this. How am I going to do this? And then obviously, that partnership kind of eased things down a bit. And then when I first went in to bat and SRT Sachbhai got out and I went in, Viru was making his debut as well. So it was him and I. And that also gave me a little bit of confidence in terms of Viru doing well, because that was his debut as well. So he had played international cricket before and he was kind of, did all right before that. And playing with Viru is a different experience altogether, because he sees the game in a very different way. it's like 180-degree difference between me and you. We are poles apart. All right. He's watched the ball, hit the ball. Yeah. How does it matter if it's an edge or whatever, toe off the bat?
Yeah.
I would be like more worried about, so he would be worried about scoring runs. I would be more worried about whether I'm batting them well or not. You know, whether I'm looking comfortable, am I feeling comfortable? So it was a very different mindset. And he wasn't bothered about whether he was looking all right or not. He was more bothered about, scoring runs, however it came. But yeah, so started batting and watching him and playing with him was absolutely super. That helped a lot as well. And then first couple of deliveries when I faced, and I was like, all right, I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
But then you still don't know. You know you can do this for an over or 2 or 3, but you don't know whether you can score or not. I think my first innings I got 34 or 36. I think 34 or something. And I looked and I felt solid. I felt like, technically I was correct. I wasn't hurried. I wasn't rushed. So that was brilliant. I think 90, I don't know whether he played that test or not. So next test he played. And he was, at that point in time, one of the quickest in the world. And also he was not the most accurate. So if you face an accurate bowler, you know what he's trying to do. So you can plan accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a field and you know what kind of bowler, let's say Sean Pollock, you know what he's trying to do. If you have Jacques Kallis, you know what or Makai Nathini, he's going to go wide of the crease, try and get it into you, and things like that. But with 90 or with bowlers like that who would just want to come in and bowl fast, you don't have a plan for them. You just you play them on the go. So and I still remember, because by then, I mean, speed guns and all weren't that popular. Now it's like it's part of everyday broadcast now. Back then it wasn't that common. And I still remember in Port Elizabeth, they had a speed gun and a monitor on the big screen. They would be showing the speed. And 90 comes in and bowls fast. He's quick. So I play him all right. And then I still remember it was somewhere backward point. So corner of my eye. And it's obviously you can't just look at it, right? I mean, it doesn't look nice. You just corner of your eye, try and take a glimpse of it. It's like 146, whatever it was in the 40s, mid 40s, late 40s. That's not bad. and then it went up to 152, something like that. And I was like, God, I'm good. I can do this, So I think the whole journey was very gradual. So first it was like, am I good enough to just be here? So first innings was like, yes. Am I good enough to score? Yes. Then the other important thing is it's not just about you. You also want that respect from your teammates, from your peers in that dressing room. And I think that second test, the first test, obviously, I mean, because then the second test I was opening, and obviously they saw something in me when Saurav called me in his room and said, do you mind opening? I was like, I don't care. I just want to play. Yeah. I mean, you asked me to bat wherever. If you want me to open, I'll open. He said, okay, you're open. Because I went in the first test, I went in when the second new ball, or I played the second new ball, and I was technically all right, and I managed the second new ball all right. So they saw that and they thought, he can play the new ball. And that was also kind of a vote of confidence. I can open and I can play the new ball. And then that innings, and I was like, yeah, I can do this.
Not many keepers actually open the batting, but you have mentioned in previous interviews that yes, because there's some logic behind it, keepers do face the second new ball. So you can translate that to the first new ball. And as well, you had mentioned something very interesting about how keepers are completely in tune with watching the ball release from the bowler's hand behind the stump. So when you go into bat, it's easier to just continue that momentum. And you don't have to reorient yourself after like half a day in the dugout. You had mentioned Port Elizabeth facing 90 Hayward. You have often cited that partnership. Well, actually, you've had many memorable partnerships with Rahul Dravid, but you have often cited that partnership with Rahul Dravid as one where you got a lot of insights into how he constructs an innings, his mental game. So once again, for someone who will probably never get a glimpse into Rahul Dravid's mind, can you provide an insight? What lessons did you learn from Rahul Dravid? What mental techniques does he use to construct one of those famous, long, enduring innings?
One of the first things I learned was to just play every ball. I mean, we keep talking about it, but having a routine. And then after every over, he would just come, and when we would meet after every over, it was like a switch. I won't just switch off, a switch down, where generally talking, but you aren't talking about the game itself or the match itself. Generally about a lot of things. So this whole thing, because I was always very intense in terms of whatever I did, so that would fatigue me very quickly, because you can't be focusing 100% for the whole game. So you got to learn to kind of step up and step down. So that was one thing, a major thing that I learned, that, you need to kind of relax while you're batting as well. Yes, you're 100% when you're facing the ball, but once you face the ball and the time period, whatever it is, like 20, 25 seconds between two deliveries, you need to kind of step down and kind of relax a bit. You can't be that intense right through. Mm-hmm. That's one of the major things that I learned. And things like, what is important. At times we get carried away by scoreboard and, the moment itself, the occasion, and what is in front of you. So in front of us, that particular test match, that particular day was to bat through the day, right? And if you think about it, first hour or second hour of the day, you're thinking about 4 more hours to go, those conditions, those bowlers. And you think, oh, geez, that's a long time. Yeah. But then just to break them down to one ball at a time, one over at a time, half an hour, one session, that whole process, I know it's easier said than done. And we would say that, but the tools to do it, how to do that, I think that's exactly what I learned batting with him that day. And things like, so in Port Elizabeth, I can't even pronounce, they've renamed that stadium. I can't even pronounce it. There are quite a few clicks when you pronounce that name of the stadium. So I think there was always a band playing. If I'm not wrong, it's called St. George's Band or something. And between overs, we would listen to the music. Those are tools, basically, not really listening to the music, but just taking your mind off from that heightened state of, concentration or whatever. Just bring it down a few notches and just relaxing. Those things, and not just that, and something that I didn't do, and I learned very late. He said something, I think it was tea happened, and we got back for tea, both Rahul Bhai and I. And by then we were confident of saving the test match. We're like, yeah, up to bachi, we had 8 wickets, I think, in hand and what. And in test matches, you got to play 1 hour and then they call off, because mandatory overs are called off. If nothing's happening, that is. So we were pretty confident. And I think I was batting on maybe late 50s or early 60s. And he said, you know what, Deep, you've done your job of saving the team. Now you won't get a better time to score a overseas 100. So start playing shots. And I was still stuck into my mindset. And he said, and that is the greatness of these players, understanding situations and playing accordingly. I still went on and I played for another half an hour or whatever it was, the same way. But at the other end, suddenly Rahul Dravid started batting in a different mode, different tempo, right? Mm-hmm. Because he told me, listen, they've also let go now. They also realize they're not going to win this test match. So their intensity would come down, right? But you make sure your intensity doesn't drop. This is the time to score quick runs. And so unfortunately, I did not, or I was still stuck in that mindset of, I'm just going to bat. I just want to bat. And at times when I see Cheteshwar bat, I can relate a bit. because it is not about scoring. It's just about the pure thrill of batting. Just bat. So to a certain extent, I can understand that. But I never got out of that mode. And that's something that he said to me, I still remember, and I should have kind of, adhered to it.
The ability to step up and step down is such an important technique that not just it's useful in cricket, but like in life in general, a lot of people just focus throughout and then end up burning out. For Rahul Dravid, like I'm always fascinated by his approach to cricket. I had visited the Lord's Cricket Stadium. I'd done the stadium tour. And one of the guides, this is one of their favorite stories, is that Rahul Dravid was coming. I think this was his last tour of England, and he had never scored a century in Lord's. And this was the only thing that was on his mind. He was fixated that I have to get a century at Lord's, even though the man has achieved so much that he's already a legend of the game.
Thing is, everyone wants to do it. But there is a process behind it. And that is what these greats, they know how to get it done. Right? I mean, listen, you would want to do it. I would want to do it. Every time you step out there, whether it's you're playing for your club, you're playing for your country, or you're playing for your colony or whatever, your unis. But how do you break that 100 down to a single run? So that is a process. And the reason why these guys are greats, because they know how to break it down. There are a lot of guys who might have that talent, who might also have that motivation and that hunger, but might not know the process to do it. These guys, they know how to do it. They know how to break down those 100 runs into smaller bits and then move on.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's all these cricketers have such a acute ability to play in these phases. Yeah, so for Dravid as well in that story, and this is one of the favorite stories the tour guys share, the Lord's Cricket Stadium, is that he came in so focused that he was insistent on asking the staff at Lord's, who was the last person who scored a century here, and it was Dilshan. And he was like, where did Dilshan sit in the changing room? And he went and sat there and didn't talk to anyone. And then when he went out, he was so focused, he actually ended up getting his Lord's century in his last innings there as well. So it's I love that story so much. Okay, let's talk about some of the stuff that's happening off the field. That series is often touted in multiple documentaries, books, articles as one of the first visible markers of the changing in power in international cricket. In his book, War Minus the Shooting, Mike Marcus had spoken about the changing face of international cricket, how that seed was planted in the 1996 World Cup. But if people have to really identify a turning point, and when I'm saying a turning point, I'm quoting the cricket writer Rahul Bhattacharya in his book Pandits from Pakistan, where he had said that the turning point, not as in turning point, the point at which the tide turns, but the point from where the tide can no longer turn. If people have to pinpoint that turning point, it would be that series, that test match, the incident with the match referee Mike Deness, Sachin, the subsequent bans in which you also included, and the subsequent unofficial test.
Yeah.
Would you agree with this reflection on it? This has become such a historic season in that regard. Do you agree that event, that series, that test match was the first marker of the growing importance of India and BCCI and international cricket?
I would tend to agree with that, yes, with that statement for sure. Because earlier on also you would have incidents like that. But I think you said, Rahul mentioned it, there was no turning back from there onwards. We just built on that momentum and just went on and got stronger from that point onwards. Mm-hmm. Because in the past as well, you'll find incidents where, such incidents where things happened, but it did not take off, so to say. But this was a point from where it did take off. I think a lot did happen. It was always simmering before that. The world tale and everything coming into the picture and stuff like that. So that was always was simmering. But I think needed a big push, and I think that was the push when things changed. And and I got to give a lot of credit to BCC at that point in time, and president was Mr. Dalmia, and obviously Saurav. I think Saurav as a captain was phenomenal. He was like a proper leader. I still remember all six of us were called into the match referee Mike Dennis's room, and he just told us, don't say a word. Let me handle this. I'll do it. I'll do all the talking. And he kind of represented all of us, and he was there, and we came back, and it is just unbelievable, that dressing room. Um, all these guys, they were going through a lot, but there were youngsters like ourselves, as Dasi, myself, and a few of us. We kind of, they kept us away from all that was happening. So we knew something's happening here, right? But they were like together, whether it's Anil, whether it's, Shri, whether it's Sachin, whether it's Rahul, they were all kind of together and sorting things out, speaking with BCCI, speaking with Mr. Dalmia, and all of that. And obviously at that point in time, Sunny sir and Ravi Bhai were also part of the broadcast crew there. They got involved. That was, I think, also one of the first times, it seems, again, from my point of view, where the Indian team was not just the 15 guys who were there playing. It was the management. It was the coach. John was the coach, the association, the board, BCCI, the media contingent as well. Not just the broadcasters, but even the Indian media, the traveling media. It was the first time it felt like, we are not alone. We are not just 15 of us left on our things, So it was like the whole team together, coming together and fighting this together. And that was phenomenal. And the seniors and the management were brilliant. They just kept us away from all that was happening to a great extent.
So many instances of leadership there. Sourav Ganguly, of course, I think I grew up watching Sourav Ganguly, and probably the first most fearless out there Indian captain who taught the team to give it back and change the face, or like change the whole mindset of the Indian cricket team. You've, of course, mentioned how before the tour of Australia, there was a meeting about how we want to play. But then Sourav Ganguly actually went there in Gaba and played that innings of 144, which is, I think, personally, I think one of the best innings played by an Indian captain at the Gaba or
quite possibly.
Yeah, quite possibly. And then I even remember Ravi Shastri going up in the press conference where Mike Deness didn't say a word. And he just got up and said, we know what Mike Deness looks like, so why is he here? It was like everyone was standing up and the leaders really took that brunt. It was fantastic. So I'm going to switch topics here, and I want to conduct a short masterclass into wicket keeping, because wicket keepers have probably one of the most underappreciated roles in cricket. If you do your job well, no one's going to talk about you. If you're in the news, then you've probably messed up. So what I want to do with you is I want to dissect the role of a wicketkeeper, the physical, mental skills that you need, and the technique as well. And then hopefully create a very short masterclass around it. Are you up for the challenge?
Yeah, go on.
Let's do it. So first, let's talk about the technique. There are so many variables that go into wicketkeeping. There's the position of your hands, your head position, footwork, body stance, how you rise with the ball, transfer of body weight. So many different variables. You have often said that there are negotiables and then there are non-negotiables in wicketkeeping. So first, let's start with the non-negotiables. What are some of the key aspects that every wicketkeeper needs to have in the technique? And then what are some examples of wicketkeepers who did that well?
Well, okay, let me just start by saying that when I started keeping, or till my generation, even though keeping's always been known as this thankless job and a very specialist job, blah, blah, blah. But I think that was one facet of this game which took a long, long time to evolve. Mm-hmm. So what I was taught growing up, I'm sure was what was taught to Godfrey Evans as well. It was the same 100-year-old, get behind the ball, footwork is important, your hands, soft hands. And a lot of that was very cliched because we never had back then specific keeping coaches. So would have general coaches who would just, their coaching of wicket keeping was very, theoretical, what they've heard, and they would pass it on. So we've been lucky to have some really good keepers in the past, but then most of them are very natural, whether it's Syed Kirmani, whether it is Nayan Mongia, Kiran More, very natural, right? But it wasn't very organized, the whole coaching bit. It wasn't broken down into smaller bits like you do with bowling and batting. So it wasn't talked enough about keeping as a facet. And that's where I think what I figured out during my course of playing, that the things that I learned was not correct, was not right. It is all right to go by with, but then when I moved up a few notches and played international cricket, my technique wasn't right. It took me a while, and it took me a coaching course which I did myself. 2002, I came to England to play professional cricket, and I did my coaching badges while I was playing. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to coach myself. And that was when I started thinking like a coach. And that's when I realized keeping is such a, you know, a, unorganized facet. And then, so I thought about these non-negotiable and negotiable bits that we're talking about. So the non-negotiable bit is your balance, and there are ways of getting to it. So, we were told, okay, feet shoulder width apart, and that was it. But break it down and say, balance. And balance could be shoulder width, could be narrow, could be broader. So basically broader. So balance is one thing. Your head position, right? We were told to, footwork is important. You got to move well. If you dive, that means you're not a good keeper. You're not moving enough. Yeah. But we tend to forget, the more we move, the more our head moves and our eyes move. The stable we are, our eyes are stable as well. So, so head position, you can call it head position. You can, say less movement, because as keepers, we keep talking about footwork. You really don't need to move much. In spinners, offside, half a step, down the leg side, 1.5 step. Fast bowlers, you don't have enough time to move more than a step either. Side, a little more than a step, 1.5 steps, maximum 2 steps. That's about it. So you don't really need to move a lot if you think about it. But the focus was always move, move, move. But the more you move, the more your eyes move, the less balance you would have and less, judgment you would have. So 2, and third is hands, good hands. And those good hands could be either very soft, like MS has, so you don't have to take back. The reason that he's so quick taking off the bails is because he got naturally very soft and padded hands, and he doesn't need to give. He can just gather there and take the bails off. If you don't have naturally soft hands or padded hands, and then you can work on it, but then you got to give a little bit, so that whole, the hand thing. So basically these 3 things, and then you can work around the other things, footwork and stuff like that. I would just, and the other important thing with coaching that I feel is there is a tendency to complicate things. Yes, it is a complicated sport. It is a very complicated sport, like any other sport. But the thing is, the idea is to uncomplicate complicated things. You can't go to an 8-year-old and talk about angles. And you can't talk about other things, more technical things. So you got to uncomplicate those things. So you can get into a lot of complicated stuff and throw jargons and stuff. But the idea is to uncomplicate and simplify things. And that's the reason you just stick with those 3 things, and then you find how to get to those 3 things. The balance, the stability, stable head, good hands. How do you get to that is important. And the other thing, if I may add, is positioning. You got to be in the right position, which call it footwork or whatever, but get into a good position.
Definitely crucial aspects of your technique. Let's quickly talk about the negotiables as well. Ridley Jacobs, the former West Indian wicketkeeper, had once told you, I get paid to catch balls. How I catch them is my problem.
No problem. 100%.
He's probably he's a good example of an unorthodox wicketkeeper. Another wicketkeeper who was pretty unorthodox is not a keeper many people have heard of. Name was MS Dhoni. I don't know if many people have heard of him.
Yeah,
Another
true.
one. Let's talk about some of the negotiables in wicketkeeping. What are some of these aspects of the technique that can be different across wicketkeepers, and examples of keepers who did that as well?
Hmm. I think I think MS was. I mean, obviously Ridley Jacobs was extremely unique, and when I say extremely unique, I mean it's unbelievable how unique he was. So it's very difficult to kind of emulate him and use him as a benchmark. But MS was unique, but very repeatable. So you can actually follow him and what he does because that's exactly what he's done. And this whole idea of me getting into the negotiable, non-negotiable to a great extent is to kind of break down MS's way of keeping. If you see most of the keepers now, you see MS in them, broader stance, limited limited footwork, enough to get into the right position, splitting your body from your hand. While we were growing up, we were only told get behind the ball. But the idea is if you get behind the ball, Indian subcontinental pitches, first class cricket, when the ball doesn't bounce over your hips, it is fine. But the moment it starts bouncing and it comes to your chest, you're stuck there. You got nowhere to go. So you got to separate your hands from your body. So your hands move a little differently than your body. Yeah. Again, things that you could see in MS's keeping over the years, things that he's moved. Those soft hands. A lot of keepers nowadays want to just grab it and take the bails off, which is fine. But there is again a process behind it. You got to figure out whether you can, whether you have those aspects, in you to do that or not. So I think MS is an absolutely was a game changer as far as keeping is concerned. Absolute game changer. I always follow a lot of Australian and English keepers who are traditionally they produce really good keepers, especially English keepers more than Australian. And why I say English keepers is because Australian keepers they do keep against spin, but predominantly leave aside Ian Healy. Before that, there was a lot of 80-90% or maybe more of that would be against fast bowlers, which is standing back. And standing back in Australia is good 15 odd yards back. So you have enough time. So it's very different. But in England, obviously there is lateral movement. There is a lot of movement post the ball post it's crossed the stumps. So one is that. Secondly, they do a lot of keeping up to the stumps against seam bowlers. You see a lot of these 110K bowlers in England and English cricket through club cricket and above. So a lot of those keepers, they are very good, brilliant, standing up to the stumps as well. And that's where I think I learned a few things, like I mentioned, coming to England, playing professional cricket and getting my badges. So yeah, you see a lot of that MS thing being replicated in modern day keepers.
So many aspects of the technique and how MS changed the game as well. I just love wicketkeepers. It's such a physically taxing job, and even mentally taxing job. But somehow fast bowlers have put this myth out there that they are the hardest workers on the field, but in fact it's the keepers. Keepers need a better PR team is my conclusion out of it.
100%.
Let me try to squeeze in one final big question and then we'll start wrapping up. And that's about broadcasting, this third phase of your life, which you've started to ace. I've always believed that broadcasting, color commentary, play-by-play, this is a specific skill set. It's an art form in its own way. Yeah. Not necessarily a job that every former cricketer can ace, but that just seems to be the natural line of progression. You obviously have great examples. You're one. I feel like you've personally really worked on that skill set, on broadcasting, on commentary, to make it some form of art or specialized skill. Dinesh Karthik is a recent example, someone who's really adapted to it really well. Ravi Shastri, Ian Smith, Ian Bishop, Mike Atherton, Nasser Hussain, these are two of my favorites. Do you think there's a moment of reckoning for broadcasting in the future where it's not necessary that former cricketers would just move on to it like a retirement job, some form of pension, but rather there would be some new form of respect for broadcasting, for the skills it requires and for the art form it is?
Definitely, yes. There's absolutely no two ways about it. First of all, thank you for your kind words. You're really kind. But I tell you what actually happened. If you look back, you didn't have enough ex-cricketers coming into broadcasting. I'm talking about good 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So now, and it wasn't a natural progression, as you mentioned, and it was obviously didn't have as many opportunities as well. It wasn't as natural as it is now. But what has happened now, avenues have opened up. You have more X players coming into it. So automatically, there'll be competition there. So there'll be a filtering process happening any which way naturally. So it is not a rite of passage that you've played the game. Right. So yes, I mean, that helps. But then, like you're saying, it's a different skill set. I mean, knowing the game, playing the game, and being able to communicate are two different things. Right. So that I think will happen as more and more. And what has also happened, players in the past weren't media savvy. Right. Now, almost everyone is, because not only you're talking to media, you run your own media through social media, right? So you speak, you're more comfortable talking, you're more comfortable with yourself in front of the cam. So yeah, I mean, so you're kind of ready coming into this field any which way, those things. But yes, I mean, as competition increases, more and more ex-players get into this, get into broadcasting field. You'll see a difference. You'll see a natural filtering process, which is already there. I mean, listen, but the good part is, I mean, it's such a vast field now. There's so many opportunities now, so that helps.
I'm interested to see how it evolves over time. Okay, let's start wrapping up, moving into some of our closing rapid fire questions. So what are some books, movies, role models that have strongly influenced you in your life?
Movies. I'm not a big movie buff, so I don't really watch a lot of movies. And especially in this age of, I don't know. I mean, I've also kind of become like too impatient to sit and watch a movie for 2.5 hours or something. If I find something interesting, I watch, but I barely watch movies. Books I do read, but it's, well, I have a very, I read a lot on politics and stuff like that and world history and all of that. But one of my all-time favorite books, and I would encourage everyone, The Difficulty of Being Good by Gurcharan Das. I mean, that's his take on Mahabharata and the different characters in Mahabharata. And it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I don't know. I've read it a few times. I've recommended it. I've gifted it as well to a few people, and I find it amazing and very thought provoking as well. And I do tend to read, and I do like to read more non-fiction than fiction, to be honest.
I'm going to ask you two unfair questions. Who is the greatest cricketer of all time, and why?
Oh dear Lord. Yeah, that is a very unfair question. Well, listen, I can only speak for the period of time where I've watched or been part of it. And there are different ones. I mean, obviously, for me, Sunil Gavaskar or Sunny Sir would always be very, very special. Because, again, growing up with him, and every time I sit with him is a fanboy moment. And Sachin, Rahul. I mean, there's so many of them. I mean, can you imagine someone like Sachin Tendulkar going out to bat every time? Anything less than a 50 is a failure. And failure we can't even, I mean, people talk about from a cricketing perspective, but if you add everything and put everything into context, the kind of pressure that he's had over the years, every time he got out to bat, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, he was like the son that you would want. He was a brother that you would want, a husband that you want, or a father that you want. He's that kind of a guy. So, and I can't think of. You might have naysayers for others. I don't think I've barely come across a naysayer as far as he is concerned. So just to, I mean, live, not just obviously play, but also now live with that kind of pressure. That every word that he speaks is scrutinized, or I mean, it's scary actually.
Kapil Dev had said something about Sachin, which has stuck with me throughout, where he said that he was far better than what he performed. He still had more talent. And that's incredible given the context of Sachin Tendulkar just having achieved so much, and he still had more, and Kapil Dev had that insight into him. Okay, second unfair question, which is the greatest cricket match of all time and why?
Ooh. You know what? I've got two games. And again, from a very biased perspective, I think, and it had, I think, a global effect personally as well. So 83 finals and 2007 finals, T20 World Cup. I think cricket changed globally post these two games. I think 83 finals is the first time that India really got into the sport from every angle, not just play it. And 2007 finals and winning the 2007 T20 World Cup. I don't know what the case would have been had we not done well or won that. Would we still have an IPL? I don't know. So things change, and post IPL, the world has changed. So I think those two, I think, are massive turning points as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Just the context and the impact of that match also makes such a difference. Last two questions. What would you like your legacy to be?
Oh God, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I still got a few things to achieve, so I don't think I've reached that stage. I know I'm old, but not that old, and I still got a few things to do in life. And interestingly, my son, he's in uni, and he was asking me, I'm a little confused. I don't know what do I want to do. He's doing economics and politics and all of that. So he's like, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. And I told him, it's all right. I'm 47 and I still don't know what I want to do. So it's okay. It's okay to just enjoy the journey. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm not worried about the legacy as of now.
Well, for now, you're already on a great path. And as someone who's also watched you play, I think you've already just been giving more and more and more to us. Final question. What is the meaning of life, Deep Dasgupta?
Okay. For me, again, if I can go back to the book that I mentioned, Difficulty of Being Good, is karma. Just do what is expected of you. Obviously there'll be hurdles. There'll be naysayers. Do your job. Do what you're meant to do.
Do what you're meant to do. That's a great meaning. Can always get behind that. So, thank you so much. It was truly a privilege talking to you.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you.